What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of All of Us Strangers, Andrew Haig's new film starring Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal. This has been an eagerly anticipated film, I think, for many. One of the last kind of staggered releases of the Oscar award season. Certainly a movie in that Oscar mix. I think Best Picture nomination, Best Actor nomination for Andrew Scott. Those things are looking likely. Perhaps a Best Adapted Screenplay nom as well. This is a adaptation of the Taichi Yamada novel Strangers. And Andrew Haigh, I think kind of going back to what he's done in some of his past works. This is, I think, a pretty, on one hand, simple in message, but also, I think, really impressive in its execution film. It's a story I think takes a lot of processing. It certainly took me some time to sit with the movie and kind of dwell with what was communicated and where the film, kind of leaves you. But I think it's a pretty impressive work. I was certainly knocked out by the ending, and I'm going to spoil it. There are certainly some spoilery aspects to how this movie goes about it, but I'll just say that I liked the movie a lot. I think the Oscar attention, although probably not going to win too much at the Oscars, but the Oscar attention, Oscar noms are certainly well deserved. This is a Searchlight movie that premiered back at Telluride, now kind of getting that staggered limited release in early January after kind of opening at the end of the year. And yeah, I think it's all pretty well earned. Andrew Scott, this is kind of the big role for him, post the Fleabag breakout, of course, as Hot Priest on Fleabag season 2 several years ago at this point. And, he's been in some stuff, of course, since then, like Black Mirror, and he's obviously had quite the career throughout this point. But this is a huge turn for him, as the lead role, Adam, in this movie. And also Paul Mescal, I mean, goddamn, been a fan ever since I saw Normal People back in 2020, kind of knockout performance from him in that. I think people know that at this point. But his role as Harry in All of Us Strangers, it's a bit reminiscent of what he gave us just a year ago with After Sun, to be honest. These are two roles, two characters that are on a similar side of the coin, let's say, to keep it spoiler free. And I think that's pretty impressive from him. He is definitely definitely an actor who can communicate, I think, a certain presence to sensitivity, unlike few people can, and what a flex by him to do After Sun and All of Us Strangers and then follow it up with Gladiator 2 later this year. I mean, hats off to Paul Mescal. I remain a gigantic fan of his. I think he's great, and he's great in this movie. And then also great in this movie would be Jamie Bell and Claire Foy, who play Andrew Scott's character Adam. They play Adam's parents. And yeah, let's kind of get into the spoilers here. So again, like the movie a lot, but there's a lot to spoil, so let's just do it. Come back, leave a comment when you've seen the movie, let me know what you think. But yeah, so basically the way this movie works is Adam is a, kind of solo, independent person, a screenwriter in London, modern times, and he basically starts going on vision quests and returning back to his childhood home and interacting with his parents who have passed away. They died in a car crash on Christmas Eve night. His parents, played by Claire Foy and Jamie Bell. And what's so, I think, interesting about it is the way they do it. And, Jamie Bell is younger than Andrew Scott by several years. And they that comes across in the movie as well. Adam basically going back to the mid-'80s when this death occurred and seeing his parents as they were, but of course returning to them as an adult with all his lived experience. And effectively, the movie is a ghost story. And it's not about being haunted, at least not in the traditional sense, but it becomes clear that Adam is a very lonely man, although, as he says to his mother, not because he's gay, but he is lonely. And returning to this clearly repressed wound of the loss of his parents and how that perhaps stunted him in some way, is if this is this vision quest that keeps happening, where he goes on this commuter train and goes back to the London suburbs to his old childhood home and finds his parents there alive, technically, it's effectively just a coping mechanism for this man to deal with his grief. And while that's happening, and it's kind of framed in the very beginning of Adam trying to write this screenplay as a screenwriter. It suggested that he's probably trying to write about how he would come out to his parents, something he didn't actually do in life. And what's really impressive about how this movie handles that is Adam is actually able to come out to his parents via these dreams. And, his parents have the biases of the time, the prejudice they would have held, but it's still done, I think, in a really tender and warm way. I mean, the scene where he comes out to his father, played by Jamie Bell, I mean, that's a particularly emotional scene. Adam asking why his dad never comforted him when he was crying in his room alone, when his dad had heard that he could tell that he had been crying. And then Jamie Bell, like, barely able to make noise via his crying. Like, I think it's a really great scene from the two of them. You have that, and kind of in tandem this whole time, you have Adam meeting Harry, seemingly the only other person living in his apartment building, this high rise in London. And Harry, makes it pass at him drunkenly one night in the very beginning of the movie, like in the halls of the apartment, or knocks on his door, Adam's door. And Adam kind of rebukes him, not because he's not interested, but almost like he just is so, I think, kind of like unable to process people actually wanting to connect with him. And they're able to kind of reconcile later on, and Adam actually says that he would be interested. And they basically develop this, relationship as two kind of independent, but also alone gay men. And, I think early on you have this kind of pot-fueled hookup, which I think is done in a really both tasteful but also sensual way. I really liked how they handled that. I think it's filmed pretty well in terms of, how you film a blowjob scene. I thought that was done really well. And, yeah, I mean, there's some, I think, really great stuff in this. Andrew Scott, Paul Mescal, there's an age gap between those two guys in real life, and that's true with their characters, where you realize that Adam is so repressed in part because of the extreme homophobia that he certainly experienced growing up in the 80s, but also coming of age in the time of the AIDS crisis, versus Harry, who's a lot more sexually forward, and they have different views of using the word gay versus using the word queer, and what those negative connotations had mean from their given times. I think that's a really intelligent scene that they have between each other, like that one too. And yeah, the relationship kind of goes from there, but meanwhile Adam is still going back and seeing his parents, and you have the club scene where they both do ketamine that Adam found in his wallet, so he says. And Adam does a pretty big bump. I don't think he realized it was ketamine at the time. Probably thought it was coke or something. And the club scene is really cool with the dancing, and obviously you got the classic, bisexual lighting, the purple in there, and it looks really good. But Adam effectively has a bad trip and starts crying out for his parents, and Harry's not sure what to do, takes him home. Things start to spiral a little bit. And I think kind of watching the movie, I think at times I struggled with what was reality versus what was a dream, what was a vision. Looking back on seeing the whole film, it makes a lot more sense. It's one of the first movies in a long time where I've kind of almost immediately wanted to rewatch it, because there's, I think, a lot of things to process from the beginning and in the end that kind of help you recontextualize what you're watching in real time. And I think to some people that might be a bit of a demerit to the movie in terms of how well it's communicated. Like, you can go on Reddit, there's a lot of people asking asking for explanation about the ending and like what was happening, what was I watching, and on one hand, I think there's a lot of interpretation to this, which I think is pretty impressive about this screenplay. Again, the way it like communicates this kind of tender ghost story, I think, is done pretty well. But you have this late breaking twist with the movie where it's revealed, after Adam convinces Harry to go visit his childhood home, takes him there, and he's like knocking on the door. His parents aren't there anymore, and he's no longer, seeing these visions after they kind of have a previous dream sequence where they're at a restaurant table and his parents tell him they can't visit him anymore. He has to move on. He has to let them go. Adam takes Harry to see his childhood home, and no one lets him in. No one's there. It's dark. There's no dream. And Harry kind of freaks out and leaves. And from there, once Adam returns to the apartment, he checks in on Harry and opens his apartment door, and he finds Harry dead in his bed, kind of decomposed. And then Paul Mescal, as Harry walks in the door behind him, and it's like kind of like a big what the fuck, like holy shit type thing, where you realize that Harry was also a ghost. In fact, he was a ghost almost the entire time in this movie. I didn't pick up on this in the moment, but upon doing some further reflection, looking what other people said about the film, it's clear that Harry's dead body is wearing the same clothes, holding the same liquor bottle that you saw Harry in when he made the first pass at Adam in the very beginning of the movie. So what effectively happens is after Adam, turns down Harry's advance in the beginning of the movie, we're led to believe that Harry basically goes back to his apartment alone and drinks himself / takes some drugs and kills himself and dies in the night. And you have this, to me, like really like deeply affecting like line where Ghost Harry says, "How come nobody came looking for me?" or "How come nobody found me?" Something like that. And it speaks and like really calls back to the beginning of the movie when Harry and Adam are first connecting and talking about their shared loneliness, where Harry was telling Adam about how he was kind of on the outskirt of his family, even though things are better now. You could tell that he was certainly a troubled man in his loneliness and in his life, and it kind of fucks you up to like realize that that like the character died right then and there, and then Adam, so unable to really connect, so unable to process his own grief, basically made up a whole other aspect of this coping mechanism where he is envisioning a romantic life with Harry and having that burgeon while he's still going on these dream quests with his parents that he can't move past. And the way that ends, where they kind of reconcile, and I guess you can interpret it as Adam basically cuddling with Ghost Harry and telling him it's okay to like move on and like go to the afterlife, I guess. And then you have this kind of like epic drop where Frank goes to Hollywood, the power of love goes in, and like Adam and Harry become these stars, and like the music is pulsing, and it's a really powerful ending. And the tears can certainly flow at that time. And like I said, like this is a movie where like there were times watching it where I was a bit confused of where I was sitting. And then when you watch the ending, you maybe even get a little bit more confused until you sit with it more. Like I said, I would like to watch the movie again just to reprocess it all. But I think what the movie says about repressed grief and loneliness, and I mean, I think it's a very moving movie, and I mean, in terms of like queer cinema, this is one of the most significant works I think we've gotten quite some time. We get works in that realm, that very broad realm, pretty regularly, of course. But I think this is pretty significant in terms of the structure of this screenplay and how it's able to, I think, really exist within genre, a ghost story, and yet still handle these like really prescient themes, and doing it again with Andrew Scott's performance, where he has to almost communicate precociousness at times, dealing with his parents who actually are younger than him. Like that whole thing almost like fucked me up at times, where I was like, Andrew Scott's older than these people. Am I supposed to pretend he's a kid? No, I have to remember he's actually an adult, but he's like going back. Like there's a lot of things to like get behind and stick with, I think, in the movie. But I mean, I really connected with it by the end, and I mean, I think that ending fucks you up, man. It certainly fucked me up. Just kind of thinking about that, and goddamn, it's really sad. And I think it's a really impressive film. I think a really funny thing I saw on Letterboxd is we need the lesbian Daisy Edgar Jones, Phoebe Waller-Bridge romance now. I certainly agree. Of course, that's the Fleabag, normal people, other half of that, following Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal. That would be awesome. Yeah, man. I think I said a lot, kind of rambled a little bit, but I think it's a really impressive movie. I'd love to know what other people think, because I think there's a lot of interpretation you can take from it. And I mean, hats off to Andrew Haigh, who for I think the vision behind this kind of adaptation. This is certainly not directly from the page. He definitely took this and I think did something really interesting and certainly very unique. And I think it's done more or less very well. The performances are all excellent. And yeah, really good movie. But yeah, let me know. What did you think of All of Us Strangers? Did you have a hard time as you were watching it figuring out where you were going like me? Did it crystallize by the end? Let me know what you thought about it. I think there's a lot to parse with that. Let me know. For more movie reviews as well as the Oscar race, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.